going to talk about high availability, that's the HA part, and site resilience, meaning what if I have Exchange in multiple sites? How do I make sure I can fail over from one site to the other? How does this actually work? Now, I got to tell you, if you watch Craig Shields' excellent 2341 video, you started to get into this. But now we want to take a little bit of a deeper dive and give you some planning notes. Now, it's going to take us a couple of videos to get through this, and we're going to start off with some of the planning side, but also, well, we're actually going to do this for real. In other words, we'll set this up so that you can see how this works. Tell you what, let's take a look at the agenda for this particular video. Now, the first thing we want to do is define what high availability really means. Now, I know you might be saying, well, I already get that. Well, I want to make sure, because there's more to high availability than meets the eye. A lot of people think about it as, well, that means I'm going to put my mailboxes in DAGs, you know, database availability groups. I'm going to load balance my CAS boxes. I'm highly available. Now, that's not exactly what it means. So we want to kind of go through what overall high availability means, and then start to look at what some of the resilience and fault tolerant features are specifically for Exchange, and that'll be like our load balancing and our DAGs. I also want to take a moment here to mention, and especially with Exchange 2013, how the message transport resilience actually helps us out quite a bit to make sure that we don't run the risk of losing an email. It's a little bit complicated, and there's a lot of new terms, but if you came from Exchange 2010, you're probably familiar with quite a bit of it. And then at the end of this, I want to set us up kind of as an introduction for site resilience. If I have multiple sites, how am I going to protect them? So there's a site, I've got Exchange in each one. How am I going to handle it if, well, one of these goes out of business? Am I still going to be able to get email? And so we want to take you through that, both with the CAS roles and with the mailbox roles, give you some planning notes for those, and get those all set up. So over the next couple of videos, I think you're going to have a lot of fun. Well, what do you say we get started with our very first topic on what is high availability and what does it really mean? So I need to start this with a little bit of a story. It's one of those kind of oops moments in my life. I started out, one of the things I did with Microsoft on Exchange is I helped a little bit of the writing, but mainly as a tech review for the Exchange 2007 course material. And we were all excited with all the brand new solutions beyond the old clustering to make mailbox servers, you know, what we would say highly available. And I remember being on a phone call with somebody from Microsoft, and I had said, you know, oh, this is a great solution. It makes it highly available. And then I got just ranted at, explaining the difference between service availability, high availability, the correct version of how to use the term. Basically, it boils down to this. While commonly high availability is used to refer to a specific technology, like DAGs, it actually what it does is it promotes service availability. It in of itself is not highly available, and so I want to talk about the difference between high availability and service availability, and then features that promote highly available environments. By the way, this rant went on for about 15 minutes, and boy, did I learn my lesson. So let's kind of start off here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw kind of the point to all of this is your user down here. And your user is a happy user, so we'll give them a smile on their face. And what the user is concerned about, regardless of what we're talking about. Now, in here we're talking about email and calendars and stuff like that. But regardless of the service that we're talking about, what they're interested in, and I'm going to kind of draw this as a little bit of a cloud, although we're not, oh, maybe a posy. I like posies. What the user is really interested in is having access to this service. So whatever this service is, they want access to it. Regardless of what happens in your environment, it's service availability that actually matters to the user. So if you think about this, it's 10 o'clock at night and I want to check my email. I don't really care if you've had a couple of server failures. I really don't care if one of your sites has gone out of business. As the user, I need to get my email. Now, to a lot of us, especially in IT, we kind of think of that, well, what are they doing checking their email at 10 o'clock at night anyways? They don't really need that. Well, a lot of users actually do need that. It's part of their business, especially if you run shops that are, more global and cross, continent boundaries. access to the service is what matters. And so making a highly available environment is all about service availability to the end user. Now think about that for a second, because now all of a sudden the picture starts to change. And let me just this is my generic picture over here. It's going to look a lot like my service, but my generic picture for the internet. So here's the internet, and I've got my internet, and I'm going to have my little user still out here. My user throughout the internet, or however the connectivity is going to work. Here's my network, and you're going to see me draw a picture similar to this a lot. And I'm going to keep this really simple right now. I'm just going to put in one little firewall. And do they get hot? Yeah, I know. They tell me never to tell jokes while I'm doing this because my jokes are terrible. And here's the rest of my network. And let's just put in, and like I said, I'm keeping this network simple. Let's put in the product service that we're offering is going to be Exchange. And so we're going to have a CASBox and a mailbox. And the user's mail is on that mailbox. Well, you know, immediately most Exchange people start to look at this and go, okay, well, I can make this highly available. And the first thing they do is, well, we'll do DAGs, which means we need multiple mailboxes, which we're going to talk about in detail, so don't panic. And we need, you know, multiple CAS boxes in case one fails, and we're good. Well, we're not good. Think about this. What we mean by highly available is that the user, this person, can always get to the service. Well, that means a couple of unique things. First of all, it means that, oh, looky, nothing happens to the network. Now think about this. You've got these machines in reality plugged into a network switch. What happens if that switch goes? Well, then everything goes. That's not good. So this means that to make it more highly available, you need to have duplicate switches. And for firewalls, if this firewall goes, well, that's not good. You need to have, you need to have 2 firewalls. Here's one of my fun ones, the internet connection. Well, if the internet connection goes, well, then it doesn't matter what you've done towards the back end. There's still so many things to go wrong. Now, there's other things besides in this picture, what a lot of people have kind of a tendency to miss. You know, there's this thing called, and I'm going to try to draw a giant plug. Remember those old plugs that kind of looked like this, and then they had a cord behind them? All these computers are all plugged in. What if the power goes? Yeah, what if the power goes? You guys know that you have some sort of power backup device. Does your power backup device, you know, auxiliary power, can it actually hold your servers up? Or is it there simply to let your servers shut down gracefully? Again, if it's there to let them shut down gracefully, you're not providing service anymore. You're just providing an easy way for you to clean it up the next day when the power finally comes on. That's really not the point. The point is to make sure the service still runs. So there's a lot of considerations here. And you know, there's other things besides just power. It's your server's hardware. How reliable is it? You know, we talked about the internet connectivity. The overall, and a lot of folks forget this, the overall security of your environment. You know, it's funny. I went into a small company and their servers were right in the main office. I mean, no protection whatsoever from anybody physically walking up and actually turning them off. So that's not really a highly available environment. So is it in a data center that's a locked room, and do you have enough power to keep everything running? Do you have duplicate areas that create duplication so that you can create this more highly available environment? Now, if you're like me, you're probably sitting there going, whoa, dude. And I promise I'll try not to use the word dude that often. This looks like bucks. Yep, certainly is. And so you obviously can tell that everything I'm talking about is an increase in funds. This is where it matters what your, you know, how much the service is worth to your business. And this is a calculation in and of itself that you should consider doing. I mean, if mail goes out, how much money do you lose? How much work effort is lost in this process? That will help you decide on whether it's the funds. I mean, think about it from a mom and pop shop. And you know, mom and pop shops, their mail is just as important as the email orders coming into Amazon. But in a mom and a pop shop, when do they usually need their email? Well, they usually need their email Monday through Friday, you know, hours 8 to 5. When does Amazon need it? 24 by 7 by 365. So there's a difference of amount of money that can be applied to making things highly available. Now, one little special note that I kind of want to give you on the internet stuff, and a lot of folks miss this when they look at internet availability as part of the service. And I have to tell you, this is kind of key when you're looking at making Exchange highly available. Sure, we can do DAGs and load balance our CAS boxes, but that internet connection, boy, that's really going to matter. Most of your clients are coming through there, your phones, a lot of Outlook, your OWA, Outlook web app access comes through there. So how do you make your internet connectivity a little bit more reliable? Just a couple of pointers to watch out for with this. So let me kind of clear this screen and let me just kind of zoom into the internet. One thing to think about is your internet connectivity, and I've run across this quite a bit myself. And so here's your DMZ, right? Your dirty DMZ. This is your DMARC that comes into your building. And you need to know where that's located. A lot of times it's in your data center. Sometimes it's in a telco room somewhere in the building. It would help to know where that is. And when you're purchasing, depending on what size of company you are, when you're purchasing internet connectivity, it usually comes into, and I'm going to do a kind of a building here, and we'll put little windows in it so you can remember this is a building. Okay, maybe not. You want me? I can draw a parking lot too if you want. No. Anyways, so this DMZ comes somewhere into a telco room. Your DMARC comes into the building. Now, one of the things you want to consider is a lot of folks get multiple internet lines, and so they want to have multiple lines in case one fails, that they have another one. One of the challenges is that sometimes what they'll do, because it's cheaper, is they'll order kind of a shadow internet line. Basically, what you're doing is you're going through the exact same provider and through the same equipment that that provider is using and bringing in another line right to the same place and using another line. Now, this is fine if the wires on this line break, but you've got this problem that what if something were to go wrong anywhere else with this provider? Now, it's rare, I agree, but it does happen sometimes a couple of times a year. If something were to go wrong with any of the other equipment that that provider has in that chain to get the internet to you, then you lose the internet. So what a lot of folks like to do is they like to, when they bring in a second internet line, is they want to make sure that they're bringing in a line that comes from a different provider using different equipment and comes into a different location into the building. Now, here's the interesting thing. This may not be possible in all situations, but this is supposed to be a three-dimensional road. Oh, that doesn't look like a road where there's cars going down it. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I've now experienced this 3 different times where there's been road construction, and lo and behold, the infamous backhoe. You guys know the backhoe, right? They're doing road construction, and the backhoe makes the mistake of cutting the line. Well, here's one of the things. If you have different providers, different equipment coming into a different DMARC point from different sides of the building, you can also avoid the backhoe issue. Now, I know you're saying, well, this doesn't sound easy to plan nor cheap, and no, it isn't. But if the requirement for your highly available services, and not just email, but other services that you are providing, maybe you are doing web commerce, this is the kind of thing you need to start to think about. It's actually kind of fun to think about. It's like, if a butterfly flaps its wing in Australia, what could possibly go wrong kind of stuff. In a lot of situations, especially with commerce providers where they needed to have internet and they needed to have email pretty much guaranteed, I've set up both DMARCs on both sides of the buildings and then done the infamous, let me see if I can, yeah, the whole satellite thing, or today a pizza box, the wireless pizza box kind of access on top of the building, giving you your third option. Now, if you're going to put that kind of money, that kind of time, and that kind of effort, obviously the rest of your network infrastructure is going to be aligned with this. And what I mean by that is you're going to have, duplicate firewalls, duplicate switches, you're going to have multiple access paths for your servers, that kind of thing. Yep, it sure does cost dollars, but this is what we're getting to when we mean highly available, and how important that is that to you. Well, enough of everybody else's high availability needs. let's go ahead and take a look as kind of a reviewer for some of you. You know, you might have been watching Greg's stuff, but let's go over some of the high available features that get us to a higher service availability for Exchange. So let's focus on the things that make Exchange more highly available. Keep the service availability. Remember, it's all about the end user and them getting services. So here's my simple network again. I'm going to keep it nice and simple. Let me draw this out here. And you probably already know this. You probably already have it in your environment. Here's a CAS box. Now, one of the interesting things about the CAS box is this is your entry point for all your clients, both clients that are internal and clients that are external. You already know that. But the one thing to keep in mind is that things have changed in Exchange 2013. Now, I know you're used to that, OWA, Outlook Web App, and your mobile clients. If you have some older things using POP and IMAP, they all can come through as well and get access. And they all go to, let me switch on colors. They all come through, need ports in the firewall, of course. They all come through and talk to your CAS box. Same thing as if it was internal. Now, keep something in mind, though, is that, and this is going to be a benefit to us, it's going to help us out a lot when in high availability, is that the CAS boxes are no longer RPC endpoints. Now, what that means is that if you worked with Exchange 2010, you might remember that if you wanted to make your CAS boxes highly available for Outlook clients, the Outlook clients sitting on your network, you could put in a second CAS box. And for everybody else, this was going to be an easy process. But for Outlook, it wasn't, because you would have to create something called a CAS array. And you would do this through PowerShell, the Exchange Management Console, and create a CAS array. We don't have those anymore because we don't need those anymore, because Outlook, even internally, now uses RPC over HTTPS. So RPC over HTTPS always is now how Outlook works, both internally and externally. This actually makes our lives easier when dealing with high availability for the CAS boxes. This is your CAS box high availability review. And so what you need is, well, you need at least two. Here's number one. Here's number two. I get a lot of folks ask me all the time, well, would I ever need three? Well, now we're starting to talk about performance reasons for that, to handle the load. And I don't know if you remember from watching the 2341, but you can control the throttling on the CAS boxes. You can control what kind of clients are being throttled for them, so you can balance out the load. But what we're interested in is making them more highly available. And so to do that, you really have three techniques, and it just is a quick review, because we're going to be, in the next videos, we're going to be diving into this. One is, and this is not my preferred way, but a DNS round robin. And round robin simply means that we're going to use DNS, a very simple old-fashioned technique, to send everybody to one CAS server. If it doesn't respond, a few seconds later, send everybody to the other one. This doesn't require any special equipment or any special gear. I do want to point something out, though. One of the most important things that we're going to be focusing on is site resilience. In other words, multiple sites with Exchange. There is this thing called a global DNS round robin that could help us out quite a bit. So it's not totally bad, but it's a good idea. Now, what most people do is opt for some sort of a load balance option for their site. And one that you can use with a CAS box is NLB. This is built-in software into like Server 2012. It's been built into Windows for a long time. NLB, a lot of folks say, well, NLB, don't use NLB. And you ask, why don't use NLB? And they'll say, because it's Microsoft. That's not a good enough answer. NLB is a layer 3 load balancer, which means it doesn't have all the intelligence in the world that we might want. In other words, NLB can detect if the server is offline. In other words, like the NIC fails or the cable fails, and can then switch everybody over to another server. NLB is installed on each box. And let me just make a little circle here. Gets installed on each box. And we're actually going to do this. If you haven't seen it before, this is the way that I'm going to set up the load balance in here so that we can test it and get it to work. But it does require that the server pretty much not respond to any requests for this to work. Now, a third option, and this is the one that most people are going to use, third one, is some sort of, and I'm just going to put LB. Now, I almost want to say a real load balancer, but no, I don't want to say that. What this is a load balancer that goes in front of your CAS boxes. And I'll put an LB. You can almost see me write LB. And what happens is all network communications for the CAS boxes, from the outside go to this load balancer. Now, this could be secured, HTTPS. One of the benefits is this load balancer can have all of your certificates on it, so you didn't have to do it to all the CAS boxes. And then the load balancer, using an algorithm, will decide which CAS box to go to. Now, this load balancer could be nothing more than a layer 3 load balancer. Very simple. It can detect a server outage. But it could also be a more intelligent load balancer. An example is a big IP F5, where it can be a layer 7 load balancer, where it can detect whether the computer might be responding, but the website itself or its application pool may not be working, and therefore flip you over. Also, an external load balancer like this, and I'm trying not to muddle up the screen too much, but an external load balancer like this will also give you flexibility on the load balancing algorithms. In other words, you can decide how you want these weighted. Do you want these so that each one has approximately the same weight? In other words, the same amount of communications to it. Is one server a little bit faster and you want to weight it more to one? Do you always want to start with one particular server and then flip to another? So you get a lot of flexibility with that as for load balancing. And now that's for the CAS. And this is just kind of like the quick review, and we'll definitely do all of this stuff. But also, that'll get your CAS kind of set up for some high availability action. What about that mailbox role? Now, we got to spend some time with this one in one of the next couple of videos. As a matter of fact, it's the last one, kind of part of this little series on high availability. But your mailbox role, you already know this is now more than just making more than one. Now, in the old days, and what I mean by old days is if you're coming from something like Exchange 2003, wow, has the world changed? It's like handing a flashlight to a caveman. It's no, it really has, because your options really were in this was to do basically a shared volume cluster. So you'd have your storage out here, storage, and these guys would plug into it, and you would cluster these, and you could do 2, 4, 8 node clusters with Exchange on your shared storage. The world has changed dramatically. Starting with Exchange 2007, they really started to create some more affordable options for small and medium businesses. And by the time they hit Exchange 2010, and are you working with Exchange 2010? Because then you already know the answers to this. Exchange 2010, they came out with what a lot of us consider the most miraculous, highly available feature that you could possibly have, and that's DAGs. Now, it still uses the cluster service, but only a tiny, tiny bit. DAGs are going to be, just a godsend for us. Now, DAGs are going to allow us to take the databases, not the whole service. We don't need the whole service. And we're going to be able to make copies of those databases. And we're going to be able to make as many copies as not as many as we want. We can make as many as 16. Think about that. 16 copies of a mailbox database. Do you really need a backup at that point? I mean, think that through. Do you really need another backup or another copy? And if you looked at Greg's excellent series on 2341, you also know that we can do lag copies. Now, we're going to talk more about this and how to structure this. There's a simple structure, and I'm going to demonstrate, like for reals, a nice simple structure, but we also want to talk about more of the complexities of this, putting in more databases, how many servers you want in a DAG, how deep do you want this to go, what do you want to do about your storage, all that kind of stuff. Plus, we want to add in the site resilience. Now one other thing to keep in mind is I know this picture is getting a little out of hand, but one last thing to keep in mind is as we start to look at the mailbox side, the storage, the DAGs, getting all this stuff set up, and as we're looking at our entire solution here to make Exchange the service available to our clients in a more highly available fashion, what you have to keep in mind is that there's more cost in here than just gear. There's cost in personnel, and there's cost in your storage, but really there's cost in personnel. You got to have people that are skilled and be able to manage this at those locations. The reason I want to bring this up is because I'm kind of setting you up for in the future. I'll just give you a little hint. I'm kind of setting you up for something way in the future on this course, and that's, oh man, we're going to talk about this thing called Exchange Online. Oh, I said it. Yeah. Well, we'll wait for that later. But right now, just kind of keep in mind there is a lot of dollars and cents involved in all this. Well, I'll tell you what. This is kind of the nice overview once again of the availability that we have for Exchange and what we're going to dive deeper into in the next couple of videos. But there's something else. There's two other things we want to talk about before we end up here. We're going to talk a little bit about the message transport, how mail flows, and some of the things that are being done for you. And then kind of intro into the site resilience before we dive into making it all work. Now, I know this is a lot of theory right up front, but it's actually going to be really important to us and really important to you as you're working with this. And one of the things that's highly misunderstood is how moving mail in and out is protected. And what I want to do is I kind of want to show you two pictures here. Oh great, more pictures. Yeah, so I'm going to show you two pictures here. I'm going to draw this a little bit differently. Well, no, I'm going to draw it the same. So I'll just draw it the same as I was before. Again, my little network. Now, the transport, and if you were, well, that's the wrong color, but that's okay, you get the idea. It's the firewall. The idea to the message transport, and if you remember, in Exchange 2010, the transport could be a separate role, but now it's in Exchange 2013, it's on the mailbox role. So I'm just going to put a simple CAS box out here. We're not going to worry about him for high availability. I'm going to put a mailbox role, and right now I'm just going to keep it real simple. Pretend we don't really have any high availability. One of the challenges that folks have is there a possibility I could lose email? Now, remember how this works. I've got a database over here that is where my mailboxes are going to be, and I'm going to draw in little mailboxes. And when I get an email coming in, and I'm going to draw in blue a nice little email, something to remember is this email didn't come from like the ether, although it's the internet. It came from another mail server, some foreign mail server out there on the internet that's trying to send us this. And that's through our MX records, right? It hits DNS, it looks at our MX records, finds out how to send it in. Now, if you have an SMTP relay out here, however you're sending the mail in, what our goal is to get it back into this database. But remember, we don't write it directly to the database. That would be bad, because if something goes wrong, we could corrupt the database. So we always put it into log files. And you can go out and look at those, where the database is. You can see all the log files. So we write those transactions, those emails, in the log file, and then we play them into the database or run them into the database when we get a chance. Now, here's the thing. Mail flow is fairly simple. Let's just say it comes on in, whatever SMTP or device that you have. You may have some sort of hygiene filter or whatever. Comes in and it hits our transporter, which is located here. And it gets written into a log file and gets then eventually played into that database. And everybody says, well, what if something goes wrong? What if the mail server goes out? I've lost that email. Well, that's not actually how it works. In the simplest of environments, even like this, what happens is that we don't tell the this guy sending us, we don't tell him we've gotten the email until it gets written into a log file. So we want to make sure that we actually have it before we let him know that he can disconnect and go away now. So we're pretty much sure that we're going to have the email. But in Exchange 2013, we've added some features. Now, I have to tell you, in Exchange 2010, they had some of this too. The transport dumpster is a term. I just love the term dumpster, is a term that they use. But now we have a couple of terms being shadow redundancy and safety net. And let me just kind of show you how this is going to work. What's going to happen is the email is going to come into our first mailbox server, as I have drawn out here. And we're going to write it into a log file. But before we tell the sending mail server that we're done, that we got the email, we're going to do something else. And this requires that you have a DAG. And if you have a DAG, here's another mailbox. He's got a transporter. He's got a copy of the database and the log files as well. He's part of a DAG. What we're going to do is that we're actually going to do, we're going to make a copy of that email. Again, we're going to copy that email for shadow redundancy over to this guy. That's right. We're going to have 2 copies of it. So in the event that anything goes wrong over on this side, I still have another copy of the email. Now here's the really cool part about this. This is to ensure that you're not going to lose email. So that when that other server comes up, we can play up the logs, we can get that email. You haven't lost email. This is an important thing. Once this shadow redundancy has been done, we could tell the sending server, okay, you can go away now, we got it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to keep these emails for a short duration, and pretty much we'll discard them as soon as they've been copied across. However, we have something else. Well, what if, something happens that removes several logs, like over a day? That's a pretty major failure. We also have something called safety. Okay, I don't think I spelled that right. Let's try this again. Safety. I think that's better. Safety net. What safety net is basically a real special queue. It's on the transport service of every single mailbox server. And by default, what this guy is going to do is he's going to store up to, now wait for this. Wait for this. I think this is awesome. There's a reason why I love the Exchange team so much. They're so brilliant over there. 2 days. 2 days worth of mail is going to get stored into safety net. And like I said, this is on a transport of all mailbox servers. So when we get one email, we're going to store all this. We're going to have shadow redundancy for that real rapid stuff in case we have a short failure. We're going to have safety net if there's something even more catastrophic. This is a huge improvement to the old Exchange 2010 transporter, transport dumpster that we had. And actually, safety net doesn't require that you have a DAG. So this is kind of cool. Now, one thing I do want to point out with shadow redundancy, and we're going to talk more about this, that with shadow redundancy and safety net, if you do have a DAG, and I'm just going to throw this out at you because we're going to talk about site resilience here. But let's pretend for a second this was in a different Active Directory site. We'll opt to make sure that that site gets it first before anything local. So, we're going to make sure that the email is across site as well, so that you have copies of it. Now, you might be kind of going, well, okay, this is kind of cool. So basically, what you're saying in summary is that we're going to make extra copies of the emails in some of these special queues, so that if anything goes wrong, we never actually lost the email until we get it played into a database. Yep, that's the whole point. And it's been a huge concern. I get this all the time from folks that'll come up to me and go, Jason, I get this whole, when we get it into the database, the DAG's got it covered, life is good, but what if it never made it to the database? Well, here's what's happening. The transport now takes care of that through shadow redundancy and safety net. So you got to think that's pretty cool, right? That's pretty cool. Okay, one more thing is the just kind of an intro into site resilience. Then we'll get to the videos where we can start actually doing stuff with Exchange. So a friend of mine who's an Exchange administrator and engineer who's growing up in the Exchange realm, works for a medium-sized company. He came up to me and he says, I sit down here and it was at a bar, sit down here and explain to me why it is that I might want to have more than one site. Well, let's define a single site. A single site is a single Active Directory site where you have CAS and you have your mailbox and everybody's coming in to get their mail from that single location. And so let's just say that this is, I don't know, LA, whatever that location is. And of course you'll have high availability features in there, multiple CAS, multiple mailbox, all that kind of stuff. And he said to me, why would I want to have another site? Well, now, before I answer that, first of all, some of you don't have a choice. You already do. You have multiple Active Directory sites, each that has Exchange servers in it. And so site resilience, yep, has to be part of your bailiwick. That's part of the, I don't believe I just said that word, bailiwick, but that's part of what you do and you have to deal with. And that's kind of what we're diving deeper into over the next couple of videos. The question is what if you don't have site resilience? Do you need it? And the answer is, well, again, this is all about service availability to your user. So let's talk about something, and this is very painful for a lot of us to talk about in IT. But let's take the emotion out of this for a second and the horrifying aspects out of it, and just look at the technical aspects. One of the things that we learned, and I'm sorry, but on 9/11, 9/11, 2001, was that having all of your apples in the same basket is not necessarily a great idea. There were companies in the Twin Towers that they did not survive, not because of the destruction of the towers, but simply because they lost everything. They lost their data, they lost everything that they had. So what a great idea was is for a lot of people is they said, oh fine, we'll make another site. See how we're going to get into site resilience with Exchange real quick? We'll get another site and it'll have all of our other services in it. This will be our DR site, our failover site, or even better, rather than just a failover site, we'll actually make it active so that users can use it too. Well, they moved it, this second site was still in LA, about a block over. Well, there's another unfortunate, I tried to write block. Let me try that again. I'm a blockhead. There we go, block. Unfortunately, and if you think back to the Hurricane Katrina, what Katrina really exemplified to a lot of IT people is that having multiple sites, a DR site or another active site that's working within the same regional location is also not necessarily a great idea. So everybody rushed right out, and this is something we still do today, and they created multiple sites. And I'm going to just since we're doing mail, here's CAS mail, and what they did is they decided to create them at opposite ends of the universe. Now if you're a global company, sure, you get them all over the place, but I've got LA, so let's do New York. I don't know if I really want to do LA because we all know that's going to fall off in the earthquake. No, that's a joke. Lighten up, people. So anyways, LA and New York, this would separate regionally from disasters and things that can go wrong. Now there's other simple disasters. A data center room fire could take out a location, is the kind of thing. Maybe the event of and I hate to say this, but a rogue administrator or something like that might take out a location. So we want to be able to, as quickly as possible, flip over our activities to another site. And this is the site resilience. Now with Exchange, site resilience isn't as complicated as it could be. And I got to be honest with you, Exchange 2010, it wasn't that complicated. It had a lot of stuff to do. In Exchange 2013, wow, this even gets easier. So you can see almost where we're going to be focusing for CAS and for mailbox roles in the next couple of videos. What we're going to be doing is yes, each site has multiple CAS boxes, but we need to set something up so that if these CAS boxes here are not available, I want to go over to these CAS boxes. With a mailbox, well, if we've got everything in a DAG, and I'm going to do this in green because I just love this. If these are in a DAG, woo, and I've got my databases being copied. Maybe I've got a couple of servers here with a couple of copies and a couple of servers here with a couple of copies. Yes. Isn't that cool? See, with a DAG, it becomes a lot easier for us to handle site resilience across multiple sites. Now, something to keep in mind, and I don't know if you remember this from the 2341 videos with Greg, but when we're setting up a DAG, and you'll see me do this here in a little bit, when we set up a DAG, we need to have a witness. A witness helps us to make sure that our quorum, that we have enough votes to vote the right thing in. Now, a witness can be located in one of these two active sites. But some people, as I will show you, will locate their witness in a third site. That way, we always get a quorum. If this site goes out, boom, 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 I still have a witness that's available, and I still have a site that I can, bring back online and get operating. If I had the witness actually all the way over here in LA and I lost the witness as well, then I got a problem, and I'm going to be actively manually activating things. So this concept of site resilience is going to become very important to us, and that's what we want to look at in the next couple of videos. I'm also going to be taking you through the ability to, or setting this stuff up once again. Now, if you're really good at load balancing your CAS boxes, if you're really good at setting up DAGs, you're already on your way. But along the way, I'm going to give you some important site resilient notes as we set this stuff up. So this is kind of our intro to site resilience on why we're going to be doing this and the importance of it. Well, you know what? I think that's just about it for this video. Let's take a look at a summary. The summary, the review. Don't worry, this will be really short. So what we did here is we took a look at the reasons for high availability and what high availability really means. And remember, keep in mind, while our focus is on Exchange and its features for becoming more highly available and providing service availability for our users, high availability means more than that and involves more personnel and involves more people configuring things, your network, your firewalls, your storage, all of that kind of stuff. Just keep that in mind as you're trying to set up an environment that will be available to your users. Site resilience is a part of this, making the service available as well. Now, we did a quick run through of high availability for Exchange, just kind of reminding you of the concepts of what we're trying to do with the CAS and the mailbox rules. And I want to point out that if any of that was like, oh, I'm not, it was way beyond, go check that those videos by Greg Shields, because that's kind of like the startup for all of this. We also stopped by and took a look at the messaging transport and the things that it does with its shadow redundancy and safety net to ensure that you're not going to lose an email message because a server crashed. In other words, we're going to hold on to that sending server and we're going to make sure we have multiple copies of that email so that it gets played into the database and then updated wherever we had a crash. This is a very important concept that happens for you automatically that a lot of people just don't realize. And sometimes they go to bed at night with this fear. I know I used to. It sounds weird, but yes, I used to go to bed with this fear. So, and then we started off with the site resilience. And I have to say, site resilience really ties into the high availability piece. In a lot of the environments that I work with, working with users getting their email is more than whether the Phoenix location is operating or not, and all kinds of things, even the simplest of things, the loss of internet connectivity for, believe it or not, you can lose it all day long, or a fire in the data center, or a rogue admin, or a simple mistake could make it so that having another active site can really mean a big difference for that service availability out to your user. Well, you know what? I'm almost positive that we're ready to move on and actually start doing some hands-on with the site resilience and setting up the CAS and the mailbox again. So I have to say, I hope this video has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.